London, year 1663. The plague was not what young Carlisle feared the most, nor the sinners. Not even the darkness of alleys where the stench of death mingled with the smoke of punishment pyres. What he feared most was his father. Reverend Cullen was a man of unyielding faith, a man with the Bible in one hand and judgment in the other. His voice was feared by many, and his word was law among those who believed that evil walked on two legs. To Carlisle, his father was a beacon, but also a shadow. He raised him with the conviction that the world was infested with monsters, witches, demons, and above all, vampires. They are creatures from the abyss, he said, sharpening stakes with trembling but determined hands. They mimic humanity, but their soul is rotten, and that's why they must burn. Carlisle was only 23 when he was appointed leader of the Purification Patrol. He accepted the position with devotion and with fear. Not fear of the creatures, fear of not finding any. Because although he had heard stories, read texts, even witnessed executions, he had never seen what his father claimed. No fangs, no red eyes, only pain, only human screams. One night in the sewers of London, the screams changed tone. There was something real down there, something fast, silent. And when Carlisle saw it, barely a flash of shadow among damp stones, he didn't hesitate. He chased after it with other men, wielding stakes and prayers. But he didn't catch it. He found it. It was a trap. The vampire, ancient and half-mad with hunger, attacked with superhuman speed. The others fled. Carlisle had no time. The fangs tore through his neck. The world went dark. He awoke days later, alone, in a subterranean crypt, covered in dried blood, with his throat burning and his soul torn apart. The process was brutal, agonizing. His human body died slowly while his mind tried to understand. When he rose for the first time, it was not with fury, it was with guilt. He was a monster, the son of the hunter, turned into what he had sworn to destroy. He could have fed upon emerging, he could have killed, but he didn't. He hid, like a wounded animal. And thus began the most harrowing phase of his existence, resistance. He went years without feeding, years alone, locked away, facing the fire of thirst and the weight of conscience. He tried to kill himself multiple times, but his body wouldn't give, and his soul wouldn't surrender. "If I have been condemned," he once whispered before a dusty altar, "then I will make this damnation mine. I will not kill. I will not fall. I will not become what the world says I must be." His first meal was a deer. His first thought after hunting it, "This doesn't make me human, but it doesn't make me a killer either." With that principle, Carlisle began to build his faith from the ashes. He traveled, he read, he learned. He studied medicine in Italy, anatomy in Prussia, philosophy in Paris. He witnessed revolutions, empires falling, diseases ravaging nations, and eternity never stopping. For more than a century, he met no one like him, until he encountered the Volturi. Voltaire was a mirage, Arrow, Marcus, Caius, a refined and cruel triumvirate, elegant and dark. They offered him knowledge, access, respect, and they also offered him blood. Carlisle refused them again and again, but Arrow admired him. He called him the philosopher of golden blood. "You are the exception that proves there is still beauty in the curse," Arrow once said, touching his arm with cold fingers. But Carlisle knew he couldn't stay, because where Arrow saw admiration, he felt danger. Voltaire was a place of logic, without a soul. Then came America, and with it hope. There he found his purpose, to save lives. Every surgery, every disease treated, every patient who smiled, it was a stake driven into the chest of the monster history said he was. And there something else began, a desire not for blood, but for companionship. Because eternity without someone to care for was another form of death. When he found Edward, it was not out of impulse, it was out of reflection. A beautiful young man, condemned by influenza, with eyes still full of life while his body faded. Carlisle chose him, not out of necessity, but for love of a soul that was fading without ever getting the chance to choose. And that choice would change his life forever. Chicago, 1918. The air was thick, poisoned. The city groaned under the weight of the Spanish flu. Empty streets, churches filled with bodies, bells that never stopped ringing. Carlisle walked through hospital wards with downcast eyes and steady hands. He knew death wouldn't affect him. But that didn't make it any less terrible, because Carlisle had spent nearly 3 centuries watching people die without being able to stop it. And then he saw the boy, Edward Mason, 17 years old. Intense gaze, death in his lungs. His mother, Elizabeth, already voiceless, had held his hand that very morning. "Save him," she had whispered to Carlisle. I know what you are. Don't say it, don't deny it, but do it. Not for me, for him." And then she closed her eyes. Carlisle waited until the very last moment, until Edward's heart weakened like a candle about to go out. And then, with trembling hands, he bit him. Not out of impulse, not out of desire, but out of faith. Not his father's faith, but a new one he had built himself, faith in second chances. Edward woke days later. He screamed, cried, destroyed the basement cot. But Carlisle didn't leave him. For weeks he spoke to him, taught him to control the hunger, explained the code: don't drink human blood. Not because you mustn't, but because you can choose not to. Edward resisted, doubted, even left for years. But he returned, and Carlisle waited, as he always did. Because Carlisle wasn't looking for disciples. He sought redemption through love. The following years were like blank pages. Edward was the first. Then Rosalie, whom Carlisle saved from the horror of rape. Not to create a mate for Edward, but because he couldn't let her die unjustly. Then came Emmett, brought by Rosalie, covered in bear blood and clinging to life with a faint smile. Then Esme, whom Carlisle had known years before and thought lost forever. But he found her after a suicide attempt, and this time he didn't let her fade away. Alice and Jasper came on their own, a surprise, a blessing, and without realizing it, Carlisle stopped being a solitary vampire to become a father. They lived decades in silence, following storms, hiding from suspicion, but bringing peace where they could. Carlisle worked in hospitals, in universities, studied every new science with a hunger for healing, and taught his family that the world isn't to be conquered, it's to be cared for. But the real test came in Forks, when a human, beautiful, fragile, stubborn, entered their lives like an impossible spark. Carlisle watched her, saw what Edward couldn't see yet, that this girl would make him choose. And when Edward asked for help to save her, to turn her, Carlisle broke for a moment, not from fear, but from memory. He remembered the young man he had been, the fire, the church, and a choice. What would you have done in his place? Edward asked him one night, voice breaking. Carlisle took his time to answer. I would have offered her the truth, and if she still loved me after seeing it, then I would have let her choose. Over the centuries, Carlisle never lost his soul, never let the thirst define him, never allowed his eternity to be without purpose. And though the world called him a monster, he had chosen to be a doctor, a father, a guide. A man of faith, but not a faith of stakes or punishment, a faith made of compassion, science, and second chances. Today, when he sits by the piano and hears Edward play, or sees Esme arranging books by authors long gone, or Emmett laughing, or Alice drawing futures like constellations, Carlisle smiles, because in each of them, there's a piece of him. And that is the legacy no God, no shadow, no eternity can ever take from him.